Hey, I'm J.R. Lay. Welcome back to another episode of the Level Up Business Podcast. In this episode, we are going to explore how B2B entrepreneurs can create balance between their business, their family, and their finances. But first, I'd like to invite you to get a copy of my best-selling book, Banking on Change. It is the Entrepreneur's Guide to Achieving Exponential Growth in the Age of AI. Text me now. 832-240-1922. That is my cell phone. Text me and I will text you a copy of Banking on Change so that you can continue to level up your mind, level up your marketing, and level up your sales. Joining me for today's conversation is Michael Pallozzi. He is the president of HFM Investment Advisors, where he is helping entrepreneurs plan the next stages of both their financial and their personal life. Michael is also the host of the Dollar Wise podcast and the Entrepreneur's Journey podcast. So because I know that you listen to podcasts or you watch podcasts because you're obviously tuned into this one, be sure to go subscribe to Michael's podcast as well. And it'll help you level up there, both your personal, your financial, and your business life. Michael, thanks so much for joining me for this conversation today, buddy.
Well, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. I have been looking forward to this Level Up podcast since you told me that it's going to be launching someday. And I'm like, I can't wait. So I'm glad we're here.
We are here together, and it has been an amazing journey. Speaking of journeys, I know you've been married to your high school sweetheart.
Mhm.
30
Long
years.
time. 30
Been
years.
together 40 years.
Long time.
Oh, and I'm bringing this up, and I wanted to start here because I think about my wife, Delina. We met the first day of high school, our freshman year,
There you go.
Miss Bungo's class. And we were not high school sweethearts. She'll be the very first one to address that early and often in the conference.
Right? She'll remind you of that.
But how have you navigated your life as an entrepreneur together with your wife, with your high school sweetheart over the last 40 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, she is incredible. Obviously, I've been with her for 40 years. But I think the navigation comes in where we both stay in our lane in terms of running the business. My wife was a school teacher. And so that was in, innate. I knew that she was going to be a great spouse and a great parent. Um, but when we got married, I had nothing. I went to college. I paid for it on my own, and I just started working right out of when I was in college. And so navigating the entrepreneurial journey um, was easy because there was no expectations on each other. Um, we had our first child, Angel stayed home and she took care of Michael and then Gina and then Jacqueline. And that was, I'll put quote unquote her role. It's not a role, but it was so natural. That's what she wanted to do. She allowed me to go work 7 days a week, sometimes 12, 14, 16 hours a day. But we both knew our role and we both respected each other's lanes. And we just grew and matured together. And, 40 years later, here we are. Great family, great business, great relationship. And so I am lucky. I definitely, what's the saying? I definitely kicked up. I definitely punted up. But yeah,
Yeah. You
I'm
leveled
lucky.
up.
I leveled up. There you go. I leveled up.
You
Exactly.
leveled up. I'm glad you shared that. Because as an entrepreneur, and I'll be the first one to put it out there, like trying to find the balance between the business and the family and the marriage, it hasn't been an easy journey for me personally. And I think you said a key word there was around expectation. Um, like you, when my wife and I told her 18, 19, I was going to marry her. And she said that I was crazy. And she came from an entrepreneurial family. Her father had immigrated here and truly lived the American dream. Very, very successful entrepreneur. And I had nothing myself. And when we got married, we bought a home, but we had no furniture for almost 2 years. We decided to travel instead. And I think this idea of expectation is something I put on myself. Like I
Mm-hmm.
had these expectations for myself to perform at a certain level, to achieve certain goals by certain ages. She didn't have the same expectations, but it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like those expectations created conflict, probably for myself first and foremost. Has that ever been something that you've had to work through and navigate yourself?
Yeah, that's a good point because my wife was a school teacher, so and her father was a school teacher, and her mother was a homemaker. My father was a salesman. There was no entrepreneurship in either side. So I don't know where that came from in me, but I when I look back sometimes, ever since I was a little kid, I always was doing something to make a dollar, whatever it was. So that inherently, once we were together, but it came out more after we got married, is I was so driven as an entrepreneur. And Angela just didn't really understand that part of me, but she just accepted it and knew that was my role and just let me play that out. And in the moment, because I was so young when we were married, I didn't realize I was taking a lot of risk. I didn't realize that things were going to turn out financially as well as they did because you just grind it out every single day. From school, I was in sales. I never ever had an employer, and I never had a paycheck, and everything was always in the beginning from commissions. And so I just had to work hard to know that I wanted to buy a house and then buy another house and take care of our kids. So it was it was challenging, but till today, you said you do your thing, and it's great.
That that's interesting because like you, my last quote unquote real job was waiting tables and playing in a punk rock band as a sophomore in college.
Right?
And so, in like you, like I've always had this, and I didn't know it at the time because my mom was a teacher. My dad was an engineer working
Mm-hmm.
in the corporate world, same organization for about 30 years. So I wasn't raised in an entrepreneurial home, but I was always looking for ways to make a dollar. In fact, I would go and cut yards,
Mm-hmm.
wash cars, like do these like things just
Me
to,
too.
and I would pay my brother actually $1 to wash my clothes because I hated, even to this day, I hate the utility room. I don't know. It's
Right.
like I'm complex about that, but it was almost like an exchange of value, and time. I
I
think
was
about
the
Dan.
same way. Like when I was young, I look back, when I was probably 7 years old, I was going to the grocery store for my neighbor who was older who couldn't go, and I used to buy groceries and she would give me 50 cents. I would wash her car. I would, shovel the sidewalk, anything to make a dollar. It was just fun. And then I had the little rolls of coins that you get from the bank that you don't do, and I used to stuff them in there and I used to round and I saved my money. It's weird, but it's what I did.
In that, but you're looking for ways to create value for other people, and I think that's the ethos of the entrepreneurial, not just the entrepreneurial mind, but really the entrepreneurial heart, is to go and find ways to create value. And you've been doing that now, helping entrepreneurs plan the next stages of both their financial and their personal life. What's the big lesson there that you have observed from your field of vision of helping these entrepreneurs navigate those two worlds of really three: business,
Hmm.
family, and finances?
Yeah. My big aha was that I assumed early on because someone owned a business and they were successful, that they knew everything about their financial situation and they had everything lined up in their mind for their retirement, their income taxes, their estate planning, their succession planning. And I was furthest from the truth. Until I started really digging in, asking a lot of questions about their planning that someone related it to me who was a roofer. I lay roofs for a living. When you need a roof, Michael, you come to me. I'm the expert. When I need help with financial situation, I'm going to come to you, and let's stay in our lane and let help each other out. So we know the concept who not how, right?
Mm.
Here was a roofer who's never been a strategic coach, was teaching me who not how way back when, and it was amazing. And so my biggest aha was I assumed the business owner knew way more than what they did, in terms of their overall financial picture, as you mentioned, financial, family, their business succession. And I was furthest from the truth in that. And then I said, wow, that's some value that I can really bring to these owners and entrepreneurs to help them in all these different areas of their life.
I'll be the first one to admit this, but it's like if I go back on my own entrepreneurial journey, it's like I was good at making money. I was good at finding opportunities, creating value. Um, I was really good at spending money too.
That's the fun part.
um, where I wasn't so good in my early entrepreneurial journey that cost me a lot of money was the savings and the investment side. In hindsight is only 2020 because it's it's like I look back and I lament and I'm finally getting to the point of peace now of how much I lost because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I think the interesting thing is I knew it intellectually. I mean, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad at the age of 18 in my high school economics class. And that was like extra credit. I did a report around it. It's like I philosophically knew some of the principles and the ideas,
Mhm.
but I wasn't practically applying them. And my wife and I, we were not aligned in that area. And I think because for her, coming from an entrepreneurial family, it's interesting you talk about the roofer. Her dad, all he knew from an investment standpoint was commercial real estate.
Mhm.
Anything outside of that, investment wise, there were maybe some self-limiting beliefs, and that got transferred to her. And so over the years, we have educated ourselves and admitted we just don't know this stuff and started asking for some help, for some guidance. Who Not How is a great example. What holds entrepreneurs back? Maybe self-limiting beliefs, because they might do great building a business, making money, spending money, but they might be struggling in some of these other areas when it comes to their relationship with money.
Mm. I think it's their ego. I mean, their ego doesn't allow them. They're a success. Hopefully, they're a successful business owner. They're running a successful family. They don't want to feel like I can relate this to myself. Everyone in the business looks to me. My family looks to me. I feel that I have to be perfect at all times. I can't be vulnerable, and I don't want to make mistakes. So, in order to grow, you need to make mistakes. You need to strike out, right? You need to get rejection. We've heard that, right? So, in order to grow, you have to be pushed. You have to be around people that are, supporting you, because otherwise it feels like you have a target on your back. And if you don't want to let someone else down, or you don't want someone to hit you at that target if you're making a mistake. So to grow as an entrepreneur, you really have to be around a good support system, because everyone out there is looking at you and saying, oh, he's making all this money. It's easy. They don't know all the hard work, the old iceberg, right? They see the tip of the iceberg. They don't know it's below the water. And so that holds, in my opinion, that holds me back a lot. And then it holds lots of other entrepreneurs back too.
Now, if you'd like to level up your business like Michael, text me right now, 832-240-1922, and I'll text you a copy of my best-selling book, Banking on Change. It is the entrepreneur's guide to achieving exponential growth in the age of AI. When I look back over the past 2 decades as a B2B entrepreneur myself, so much has changed. And as we continue to move forward into this age of AI, so much is going to continue to change, especially when it comes to marketing and sales strategies for B2B entrepreneurs. So send me a text right now, 832-240-1922, and I'll text you a copy of Banking on Change, which includes dozens of practical strategic frameworks that you can apply right now. You can apply today so that you can level up your business, you can level up your life. Now, let's get back to the conversation with Michael. Let's go below the iceberg. What has been, when you think about the alignment between the business, family, finances, what's been the biggest self-limiting belief or fear that you've had to navigate and overcome yourself?
The confrontation. I think because I don't like confrontation and I want everyone to like me, there's been lots of situations in life or in business that I could or should have taken a different direction, but I acquiesced sometimes and I just said, let's make peace of this or let's not make waves.
Mm-hmm.
And so that limited my growth a lot of times. I felt good because everybody was happy. There was no confrontation. But looking back and what I know now versus then, and I'm still not perfect by any means, that's my, underneath the water, the iceberg. Sometimes you just have to be able to tell people what they need to hear. They may not want to hear it, but and it's a skill that you have to. If you don't have that skill to be able to communicate it, it may come across the wrong way. So maybe you have to learn how to improve on that skill a little bit better, your communications. Because I'm Italian and I tend to raise my voice, and my wife and daughters tell me that all the time. And I tell them I'm Italian. I'm not screaming. That's just how I am.
You get excited and you get loud, and that
I
could
get
be
loud.
and I can appreciate that. I appreciate the confrontation piece of this too, because growing up in my home, and it's interesting how much family of origin plays into the entrepreneurial journey, perhaps at more of a subconscious level that we're not even aware of. Like the confrontation piece, that's been an area that I've had to work on myself over the years, and it probably showed up more in early marriage than anything.
Mm-hmm.
You're Italian. My wife is Lebanese, right? Like loud. If it's just culture,
Mm-hmm.
and it's on both sides. It could be excited. It could be upset, and it's just loud. And I remember in early marriage, my parents thought that we were fighting.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we were just probably excited about something or a little like energized, positively and or negatively. And but I would tend to probably shy more away from confrontation early on because I didn't have the tools or the behaviors, maybe even the beliefs of how to navigate the confrontation, because I never, ever as a kid saw my parents fight. So I didn't understand conflict resolution. I didn't have a healthy model for conflict resolution. So I appreciate you sharing.
That's funny you say that because I look back sometimes and I remember when my parents would either have an argument or we were talking about other family members. My dad always would instill in us whatever we talk about stays here in the family. We don't talk about it ever again. So same thing. We didn't have the tools to teach us how to talk through our feelings or talk through a confrontation. Everything was, let's just bury it. And that's what I did my whole childhood. Not that there was lots of confrontations at all, but when it happened, it was, we don't talk about this outside the house. So
And it's interesting, like with my kids, my wife and I, we're very open with them. We don't really hide anything. And obviously everything is in due time, because I think with that knowledge that they have gained and will continue to gain, that's going to create wisdom. And they'll have a much better, take, for example, what we didn't do in our early years of savings and investing. Like if we're able to help establish some of those beliefs and behaviors early and often, it'll prevent some of the pain and perhaps
Yeah.
even the regret that we've experienced ourselves. I want to come back to the point of conflict and conflict resolution. Where, when you think about the entrepreneurs that you have worked with over the years, where do you see the biggest amount of conflict for them at the intersection of business, family, and finances?
Mm. Well, most of my experience is working with business owners in a family-owned business.
Okay.
So they're either first or they are second generation, maybe even third. The biggest conflict that I see them is what to do with the business should they when they retire or should they pass away. There's children in the business that are super successful that could run it tomorrow and take the baton and double or triple the company value. Then there's other children in the business that they're just there because they can't get a job somewhere else. So mom and dad just says, "Hey, Johnny needs a job. Let's create a role for him." And that creates conflict. And then there's the outlaws. The children get married, and then sometimes the spouses need a job. And then, so it's like almost all of a sudden the business becomes the payroll and the financial future for the family. And so the the owner of the company then has a problem or a confrontation. How do I solve this issue when I want to distribute my estate because the value of their business is usually their largest asset. Who do I give the value? Who do I give the business to? And then I have other real estate. And you have investment accounts. What's fair versus what's equal? It's very difficult for a family-owned business, first or second generation, to decide what to do with their assets, what's fair, and how to make sure that everybody has a lifestyle. Because you don't want to tell your kids no sometimes, but that's the biggest confrontation that we come across when dealing with business owners in a family business.
I mean, it hits like really close. How do you help them navigate that
Mm,
complexity? Because I think a lot of times when it comes to communication, and my wife and I, we figured this out over the years. We got recruited very early, even before we were married.
mm,
We were going through marriage preparation ourselves at church, and there was a couple at the time had been married for about 50 years, and they said we would like for you to join the team, the marriage
mm,
prep.
mm.
We are like, well, let's do that, shall we?
Yay!
But it was one of the best experiences because we were able to prep, probably close to 100 plus couples over the years for marriage, and it all came back to communication. And it's like communication is funny because it's like you've got two parties, A and B. And I see this even with what you're talking about here with family businesses in first and second generations. There's one party that's communicating something, party A is trying to communicate something to party B. Party B might be hearing something different than what party A is communicating and vice versa. And so that's where the conflict. But then you add in a third party, enter you.
Hmm.
So now they're now able to communicate through that third party, and you're probably able to hear things clearly for what's being said because there's no emotion, there's no
Hmm.
filter. And then you're able to communicate it from A back down to B for specifically what it is, and then B can affirm that's exactly what I heard. How do you help these families navigate that complexity?
Mm. Great question. And I will tell you, as we stand here today, I am still learning how to do that every day because that is not my background in training, right? Hence my parents don't ask questions, right? So it's about asking the right questions on what they are trying to accomplish. And sometimes I'll have a one-on-one meeting with the parents. Then I'll have a separate meeting with the children. And then maybe a meeting with everyone together. And every family dynamic is really different. And you never really get to know the level of circumstances till you're at, and I haven't done this, till you're at Christmas dinner with everyone, because then you have family and you have business, and some don't want to talk about business at Christmas or the holidays, and some they only want to talk about it, and the kids don't. There's a lot there. So I am still on my own journey of trying to figure this out, and I probably would need a PhD in communications, which I'm not going there. Because sometimes, to be honest with you, we'll bring in other professionals that's all they do. There's many larger institutions that they deal with this family conflict, family resolutions, which is way above my pay grade. And sometimes I just have to recognize it and bring the experts in,
And that's where who, not how. And I appreciate the honesty and the transparency here, because it is such a touchy, challenging, difficult subject that instead of you worrying about, well, how am I going to do this? It's like, who do I need to bring in to help facilitate? Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of times, it's just a facilitation of a conversation.
Pretty much.
Which is a skill in and of itself.
Without a doubt.
A facilitator. So with that in mind, as we start to wrap up, I always like to send those watching and listening off with one practical thing that they can do next. And because we've been talking about the intersection of business, family, and finances, what would you recommend an entrepreneur who is watching or listening do next on their own journey of growth so that they might be able to avoid some of the complexity that we've discussed here today?
There's a lot of things that go through my mind, but this is one, probably not the answer that you think will be the most aha answer, but it's one that we found that most business owners in the first step of this journey need to take. And we are surprised that they haven't taken this first step, is to get an inventory of all of their assets and liabilities and the value of their business. We are surprised when we talk with a business owner for the first time, and the value or the give that we give to them is to compile this for them, and they look at everything on a piece of paper for the first time. Their eyes light up and they're amazed. Now, it sounds pretty elementary, but it's a value that we bring. So I would say, if that's the first thing, is get a good inventory of everything that you own and the values. And that is a talking point from there, especially for business owners.
So get clarity into the valuation of all of the assets.
Clarity and have a nice value, nice inventory of that. Yes.
Great way to wrap up here today, Michael. If someone is watching, listening, they want to connect with you. You've got the two podcasts, the Dollar Wise podcast, the Entrepreneur's Journey podcast, but what's the best way for them to connect with you, to reach out, to say hello?
Pretty much it's easy. They can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on it all the time. They could email me, which is mpallozzi, Pallozzi, at hfmadvisors.com, or call me, which is connected to my hip all the time. You can call myself, 609-605-7444. Leave a nice message, and I would love to just chat.
Connect with Michael, learn with Michael, grow with Michael. Michael, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Level of Business podcast.
This was great. Thank you.
This has been a lot of fun. And if you want to continue to learn, if you want to continue to grow, elevate, level up, once again, you can text me, get a copy of Banking on Change. It is the Entrepreneurial's Guide to Achieving Exponential Growth in the Age of AI. Text me 832-240-1922, and I will text you a copy so that you can level up your marketing, you can level up your sales, you can level up your business and your life without sacrificing your well-being.